Hello, welcome to the Bía Sleep Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. His name's Tony Ho from Quadra Wellness, and we're going to be very heavily focused on CBTI today. And before we get to that point, we're going to actually get to know Tony a little bit better. So Tony, welcome, and
Thanks.
feel free to tell us a bit better of an intro than that. Who you are, what you do.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I'm Tony. I'm a registered social worker based in BC and Ontario, but I work with people across the country, talking about insomnia, right? So I practice a form of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBT-I, and it's considered the best first-line treatment for chronic insomnia. Right? And that's troubles falling asleep, staying asleep, or people waking up too early and then they can't fall back asleep.
Gotcha, great. Yeah, and what kind of got you into that path?
Yeah.
How do you end up working with CBTI?
Yeah, I think sleep's always been a part of the picture. I've always worked in community mental health, so as a social worker, and really no matter what any mental health challenge that you can think of, there's always an element of too much sleep, too little sleep, can't sleep, some kind of sleep disruption in there. And we think kind of the biggest categories like depression, anxiety, stress, and so while it's important to kind of recognize that, of course, those things can make sleep difficult, sleep in itself can be a challenge too, and that can make mental health worse, right?
Yeah, very, like, one thing I noticed a lot of, I was a neurofeedback technician before, so not quite the same experience, but I had a lot of people coming in with anxiety, depression, for example, and it was very much an accelerator. If you had a good night's sleep, your health got better. If you had a bad night's sleep, your health got worse. And it pushed whatever that was faster, whether whichever angle of that downhill it was, whether it was towards good or bad. Sleep always accelerated that process.
Totally. It's like a barometer for your mental health, right? And research supports that. Usually sleep problems start to emerge before the intense symptoms of like depression, for example.
Wow.
Right. And so I think there's more research looking into if we can intervene before it becomes more difficult for someone by targeting sleep, possibly we could save someone from, really entering the depths of their mental illness.
Pretty awesome. Yeah. Getting in front of it, preventative care.
Yeah. Or if someone, has post-traumatic stress disorder, sleep disorders often follow that. But if we can target the sleep as a way of helping someone through that, perhaps the intensity of the PTSD might, decrease a little bit, and I think so. That just makes me excited because it's something that we can do, when things are hard.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like we're going to get too far down this rabbit hole, but I gotta ask around PTSD, and I know PTSD and REM. There's a lot of overlap there, and can you elaborate a little bit of what you could expect and what that looks like for someone with PTSD?
That's a great question, and out of all of the kind of mental disorders, PTSD is really correlated with increased sleep disturbances, because of nightmares, because of depression, anxiety, or other other kind of challenging mental health experiences in there. But people with PTSD are also more likely to experience things like sleep apnea and insomnia. In regards to REM, it could be because they have such disturbed sleep, they might experience more intense vivid dreams, so more time in REM sleep, right? This is why certain medications are targeted to reduce time in REM sleep. So cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is a form of talk therapy, can be really helpful to kind of at least help people get the best quality sleep as possible and address kind of behaviors or thinking patterns like lying there and ruminating that can make sleep worse, right? And then they feel worse the next day. So try to interrupt that vicious cycle.
Yeah, and how about we dive into that, because there's 4 components of CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy and insomnia. So can we just take those one by one? When you're addressing the cognitive portion in your practice, what are you looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So cognitive behavioral therapy, just before we dive into that one, is a well-tested form of therapy that looks at how behaviors and thoughts can impact your mood, right? And we definitely draw on some components of that. So common cognitions that are challenging for people with insomnia is a lot of worry around sleep. If I don't sleep, tomorrow's going to be horrible, or if I don't get X amount of sleep, then bad things are going to happen. I'm going to get dementia. It's a common fear people hear, and then they worry about it. It could be excessive effort, like I'm Googling, I'm going down this rabbit hole, what can I do to improve my sleep? Oh no, this person says if I only sleep 2 hours, I'm gonna get, some kind of illness. So we work on challenging those fears by looking at them from a different perspective. So we might challenge that. So how do you know that's true, right? Have there been times where you've stayed up late and then what happened? So we try to challenge some of the thoughts and the fears around it. We look at if someone's worrying or stressing a lot about sleep or otherwise, are there ways to unpack those worries or put them somewhere else so that you have some space to rest and relax? So those are kind of common things that we do by challenging thoughts. Behaviorally, it's really common when someone has insomnia to be lying there and tossing and turning a lot, or go to bed really early because they're worried they're not going to get enough time to sleep, or they sleep in or nap or take supplements and do all sorts of different things that can increase their anxiety around sleep. And a lot of people who are who really understandably care about their sleep, they're trying really, really hard, but sleep is one of those things where trying hard doesn't necessarily make it better, right?
Yeah. And actively engage myself to relax it's a little bit of a counterintuitive, oxymoron.
It is, yeah. And it's, one of the things that predisposes people to chronic insomnia are people who are like problem solvers, not just worriers, because worrying in itself is not bad, right? It's just, if you're already struggling with anxiety, those kind of tip you over potentially into worrying a lot about sleep, right? And so CBTI is like a big step back to figure out, how can we rebuild, clearly you value sleep, but how do you respect sleep without becoming obsessed with it?
Yes. Yeah. How do you not feed into that spiral that we were kind of talking about before?
Yeah.
And before we move on to insomnia and actually understanding what is insomnia, because I think it's a term that's thrown around a lot pretty loosely.
Yeah.
But you mentioned on the cognitive side where you kind of package up people's thoughts and put them in a new place. Can you expand on that? Like,
yeah. So different strategies that we use, but the most common one is called thought challenging. So I really work with people on recognizing that not all the thoughts that we think are true, right? Especially the ones that come up at night when we're not so distracted, we're already kind of feeling tense and stressed. And so the anxiety around sleep can feel really catastrophic. If I don't sleep, tomorrow is going to be horrible. And so we might use a tool where we just write down the worry and then we ask, well, what evidence is there that that's true? Well, of course, you've had nights where you haven't slept well and you felt really rough the next day. But we also challenge that. The next question is, well, what evidence is there to challenge that that's not true? Well, I've stayed up late before and yes, the day was rough, but I still got through it. Or there is no direct evidence that I'm going to get dementia, right? Or we'll lean on research. Well, there's actually no evidence or research that says conclusively that that's the case, right? And then the next part is not to deny that it's hard, but what's a realistic balanced thought? Yes, it's hard when I cannot sleep, but I've actually still show up at work. I still take care of my kids. I still am able to show up for my partner. And to get to a place where it's a balanced thought, so that's less catastrophic and less likely to tilt you into a spiral of anxiety or panic.
Gotcha. It's almost like a baseline resetting of like, okay, is a bad night's sleep. You anticipate you're gonna have a terrible night's sleep tonight. What's the actual damage and result of that? Rather than it being, it's catastrophic, everything's gonna be terrible, to, okay, what if I've done this 100 times already?
Exactly.
What actually happens
Yes.
day?
Yeah. And it's not to deny that it's going to be hard. It is hard, right? And we know that insomnia, and we'll talk about this, is what is insomnia, but usually people still show up at work. They still do the things that they need to do, even the basics, right? And so it's more about, well, what is within my control, right? I can't force sleep. Tomorrow I might need a little bit extra coffee. I might need a little nap. I might need to, put on my sleep mask and do a mindfulness exercise to help me get through, right?
Yeah, 100%. One thing that I remember very distinctly learning, I did an internship with paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And being able to witness that firsthand, I think a lot of people don't understand schizophrenia fully. Voices in your head, they think it's kind of like the internal monologue that most people have, but it's not. It's, the one person I remember, it was an external voice that was coming from across the room.
Yes.
It was a unique voice that they could identify. It was like someone was over there. It's not in their head.
Yes.
Literally, there is a location of sounds that they're experiencing.
It's real.
And that, for me, one, expanded my concept and understanding of how terrifying that must be. Two, how important it is to challenge our own thoughts and challenge our own behaviors, and to take a step back and not just assume what you're experiencing and perceiving is the whole picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's dive into what insomnia is.
It's a great question. I mean, just to dovetail on that, I think when you think about just mental health in general, I think that's why compassion is such a key piece. Whether, to be able to offer that compassion to yourself when things are hard, because you're more likely to reach out for help, right? But yeah, insomnia gets mixed up and people kind of throw the term around, but it's actually quite a specific challenge. It's the most common sleep disorder where people have troubles falling asleep, staying asleep, and they wake up too early, they can't fall back asleep. Maybe there's a lot of anxiety around sleep. But what makes it a bit different from, let's say, someone who's they're hustling, they're not getting enough hours in bed, and then they can't sleep. They're feeling tired because it's very different. Insomnia is where you have the opportunity to sleep, but you can't, right? Because something is interfering with that, and more often than not, it's anxiety or stress or tension, right, within the time that you're allotted yourself for bed.
Got
for
it.
Sleep.
So it's not just sleep deprivation where it's a lack of sleep.
Yeah.
It's specifically having the opportunity to.
Yeah.
The window's there, but it's not fully happening.
Yeah, and also a feature of that is that people aren't even able to rest within that time because they're just so tense, or they're really anxious about the sleep, or whatever they're worrying about is following them into nighttime. So
I can hear why, just talking through this, when you take it step by step, why CBTI can be so effective.
Yeah, it's really about figuring out what's perpetuating sleep troubles for somebody. And that's why, for example, general sleep hygiene advice doesn't really work for people with chronic insomnia, because they generally already know that. And there might be changing behaviors and doing things and putting more pressure on themselves to sleep when that's not what caused the problem in the first place.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said around mental spaces and what you create.
Totally.
And sleep hygiene can be assisting in those circumstances. They're the routines you associate with that space, but that's not necessarily actually addressing that space and your mentality within that room.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, sleep is such a personal experience in terms of what helps you feel calm, what helps you relax. Some people like ASMR. A lot of people like listening to murder, true crime podcasts. It's not my thing. That'll probably keep me up. But some people love that.
Yeah.
And so to each their own, or even screens, for example, there's a lot more nuance than what the stuff that we see in social media regurgitates, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And there's all this deep fear of blue light before.
Oh my goodness, yes.
There's lots of research out there. I mean, we wear a sleep mask.
Yeah.
We encourage you not to be on your phone, but there's a lot of data out there that it's not as bad as we think it is, the blue light from your phone.
Yep.
And I want to talk, but if you've got some good insights on all that.
No, exactly that. And I think it's personal. It's based on someone, we can experiment with that, but it's also what you're doing on your phone makes a huge difference too, right? And so, for example, if you're spending time on TikTok because you can't sleep and you're on the For You page and there's a highly curated, endless list of, of highly emotional content, that might affect your sleep more than, putting on your sleep mask and doing a guided relaxation exercise, or even watching some content that's very familiar and soothing for you, right?
Yeah.
And what's soothing can vary a lot.
Sleep is hyper personalized, which is something I think we can talk about personalization of sleep a little bit too, and then same thing here that we're just talking about. The content you consume is part of that mental space you're creating for yourself. Within that room, and being very intentional with it rather than passive, which I think is part of a struggle. Is if you're sleep deprived, it's hard to be lucid in making a lot of those choices, and that's where getting some support and help can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people often come to me after they feel like they've tried everything. And interestingly, now in the world of AI, I think more people hopefully are getting good information, right? And because cognitive behavioral therapy is considered the best first-line treatment, but a lot of people don't hear that, right? They go to the doctor's not aware, or they're short in time, so they get prescription medications or a sleep hygiene list, and so I'm excited that more people are going to access the right care at the right time, and recognize that it's really about personalizing that to them, and that it's about refining the right sleep times, helping you rebuild a healthy relationship with sleep, right? And I think really doing less about sleep, not more, ultimately,
importance of saying no.
I don't have to do all these. Well, what is helpful to me right now, right? And how do I find a way back to sleep by reducing the pressure, not adding more pressure, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And so this might actually lead to a bit of that discussion around personalization, but what generally is, if you have a client come through, what's their journey? Just if you were to try and summate them all into one one figure, what's that journey of what they did before they spoke to you versus talking to you versus afterwards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we talked a little bit about the cognitive strategies, right? We work around our mind, reducing, pressure and challenging unhelpful sleep thoughts. But the behavioral components are actually one of the most effective. And one strategy that we use, it's called sleep compression or sleep restriction. So we look at how much time someone's spending in bed. Let's say you're in bed 9 hours. You care about your sleep. You're allotting 10 to 6, 8-hour chunk, right? But in that time, it takes you a couple hours to fall asleep. You're up in the middle of the night. We would say that's really low efficiency sleep. A lot of the time you're in bed, you're actually awake. And what happens is that all the time that you're awake, especially if you're tossing and turning, you're teaching your brain to associate bed with wakefulness, right? And so we intentionally reduce the time in bed. And I know that can sound scary, but it's kind of like playing with that idea of like, if you have several nights of poor sleep, one night's easier, right? And it's leveraging the systems that regulate your sleep. One is sleep pressure. And so we want you to feel really sleepy when you get to bed so that you're more likely to actually fall asleep easily, right? The other really important component is that our circadian rhythms, that some of you guys really hone into the science of sleep. We all have different rhythms, right? And so we want to work so I spend a lot of time figuring out, well, before your sleep troubles, what's an ideal time for you to wake up that works with your life, right? So we'll use that as an anchor. And sometimes we'll push bedtime later intentionally to really help people spend less time awake in bed. And the amazing thing is, for some people, the improvements are really fast. They start to realize, actually, I'm been spending too much time in bed. I'm actually sleepy when I go to bed. And it breaks that association and rebuilds trust. Actually, I am able to sleep, and that can be a huge relief for someone, especially if they believe that their sleep is broken, there's something wrong with me, But the challenging part is it's not magic. Because our bodies need time to adapt, but it can come really, really fast.
Yeah. There's a couple of terms you talked about there too that I think it would be good to like define very clearly. There's sleep efficiency and sleep pressure.
Yes.
So do you want to take a step? I've my own commentary, but I think you'll speak to it better than I will.
Yeah. So sleep pressure is our body's own internal gauge of how sleepy you are, right? And for example, if we were to tell ourselves, let's go to sleep now, we can't, because if you had a little bit of sleep at night, there's not enough sufficient pressure. So the idea is as soon as you wake up in the morning, pressure starts to mount for sleep, especially if you've had several nights, right, where you haven't slept well. And where it's really important for people to think about is sleepiness is different than tired, right?
Yes.
Tired is working a stressful job, you went to the gym, you're taking care of kids, you're a caregiver, and you're exhausted. But sleepiness is like, I can't even keep my eyes open anymore, right? And that's really important for people that go to bed when they actually feel that pressure rather than tiredness, because it means that you're actually going to fall asleep, right? And sleep efficiency is basically the ratio of how much time you're awake in bed versus actually sleeping. And so in CBTI, we'll use something called a sleep diary, where we just kind of track some basic stats about that, right? Like, hey, it took you 3 hours to fall asleep. How about we see if we can reduce that time? And instead of lying there too early, I was thinking of when someone I worked with, she actually started to play games, right? She used to do that, but we brought that back because she was worried just that the light would affect her sleep and all these things. So why don't we stay up a little bit later, play some video games a little bit longer, and you go to bed when you're sleepy. Over a week or two, she started to notice she felt more relaxed because she was doing something she enjoyed. And she got back in touch with that feeling of sleep pressure, right? Which is one of the key things that helped her get to sleep again.
Amazing. Yeah, the phrase I remember, I don't remember who said it, but they talk about sleep happening to you rather than something you do.
Yes.
And that framework changes things a lot. It's wait for the sleepiness to hit. And, until then, make sure you're not lying in bed, tossing and turning.
Totally. Yeah, that's really kind of a key component. Is that little mantra I invite people to think about is, I will fall asleep when my mind and my body are ready. Until then, I can rest, right? And rest can look different for different people. Sometimes people, because of chronic pain or health issues, they can't get out of bed, right? But even like sitting up in your bed and say, okay, sleep isn't happening right now, but when one person I was working with plays Wordle for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, I'll fall asleep when I'm ready. I'm not going to put pressure on myself to do that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Amazing. So that's a little bit on the sleep onset side, sleep, falling asleep stage.
Yes.
Do you have specific techniques or tools that you'd be willing to share for when you wake up in the middle of the night? And I know that can happen in different ways. You can wake up all the time. You can wake up for 3 hours.
Yeah. that's a great question. And that's also a really common challenge in insomnia. People can experience all three, right? Difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or they wake up and they can't fall back asleep. Sleep restriction can be helpful with that. And the analogy I like to use is pizza dough, right? If you're sleeping 8 hours and you have this dough, but it's so stretched out, you have all these holes, right? And so the idea is when we compress our sleep, there's more pressure and more likely that you'll actually be able to fall asleep again as well in the middle of the night, right? And I try to normalize that waking up at night or being more aware is normal, right? Especially as we get older, where the architecture of our sleep changes, or for many women, right, who are more likely to experience insomnia due to changes in hormones, right?
Yeah.
So we want to have more pressure for sleep for you to be able to return to sleep. But another component is called stimulus control. It's kind of the idea of getting out of bed. We really want to associate bed with rest and with sleep. So there's often this rule of 20 minutes, but the question I get is like, well, how do I know? I don't want to look at the clock.
Yeah.
Right? It's more if you're getting frustrated, then you could get to ask yourself, what's within my control right now? Yes, I give myself permission to breathe, to relax right now. But more often than not, people get frustrated. So I invite people, if you get to that place, have a cozy corner somewhere in your room, somewhere else, just to go do something until sleepiness returns. And it will, right? Maybe not tonight, but if you get up and get going anyway, chances are tomorrow night's going to be easier.
True.
Right? So how do we reduce the resistance? How do we reduce the pressure? How do we reduce the struggle at night?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And one thing you're talking about there of the association, is that it's something that we've took into consideration a lot when we were building our mask.
Yeah.
Not to talk too much about it, we're wanting to focus on you, but because we have, full blackout, there's your visual stimulation, we have audio, we have a sense of touch through our audio as well, and then we have lights in there. We have so much of this sensory experience that we needed to focus so heavily on what each and every one of those experiences were, because the first time you wear a mask, it's a new association you're creating with sleep, and we wanted to be very intentional on that side. So I guess the question here would be for any of our customers, what would be like their very first night wearing this mask? What would be your advice of this is how you make sure you're creating that right association?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think is that we got to think about any tool that we use, including a mask, that it's not going in of itself going to make you sleep, right? Because your body will be ready for sleep when it happens. However, there can be a range of tools, including a sleep mask, to further personalize your experience, and hey, you know what? I'm going to just put this on and I'm just going to listen. I'm going to experience with try different content. Hey, I found this one really relaxing. I'm going to give myself permission to try this. Or maybe I'll take my mask. If I'm getting frustrated in bed, I'm going to go do that on the couch, And I love what you said about being sensory, because when we're anxious, we're really spending a lot of time in our head. Right? And so something that really helps us get grounded in the present moment, that allows us to physically relax, that prompts us to breathe, and that resonates with us, that's going to help invite sleep, right? And even if sleep doesn't come, it invites rest, because, for example, sometimes it's out of our control. If you got chronic pain, for example, right? Hey, but you know what? I can put this on. I'm going to do a body scan. And I'm going to appreciate the darkness and just take a breath and be in my own body. Like, that's going to help you at least get some of that restorative aspect of just being still. Right? Whereas anxiety is complete opposite, right? Your heart rate's up, you're getting tense, you're getting sweaty, and then the nighttime becomes associated with that. We want to find tools that help us rest, and relax.
Change that pattern. Yeah. The body scan is actually the very first meditation we built for this. So we've talked about falling asleep, staying asleep, and then what are some things that you try and focus on, not to try and give away too much, but waking up? What are some things that you advise on that side?
Yeah, that's kind of where some of the sleep hygiene stuff can be helpful, because depending on someone's sleep environment, so darkness can be really important, right? So depending on someone's setup, so having a good mask can make a big difference. Again, doing the sleep compression is really helpful, but the wake up time is so key, right? And so I really encourage people to find an anchor, is what I like to call it, and have no more variation than an hour, because I know sometimes our work schedule just doesn't align with our need, right? But even on weekends, like no more of an hour variation can really help to keep that window really tight, right? And when people start to stick with that, they start to notice they wake up naturally, sometimes before their alarm. Their energy starts to become more predictable because, energy isn't just like this. It kind of ebbs and flows, right?
Exactly.
And they start to feel sleepy around the same time. And they maybe no longer experience those, Sunday scaries, right? Or I'm so sleepy, what's going on? Tomorrow's gonna be horrible.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, on the energy side, like we have an energy forecast in our app on that adjusts heavily based on your chronotype. Because there's a crash where it's a good time to go for a nap or a coffee or a walk, something to create a change. And then you will have a new peak. It's not, as you're saying, it's not just straight up and down. It's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about the people you see, because everyone has sleep issues. And there's a million different ways for people to come through. Obviously, something like sleep apnea.
Yes.
That's a very different picture than something CBT-I, insomnia is. So what type of people say, Tony, I'm ready, please help?
Yeah. I mean, all sorts of different folks. Yeah. Usually people who connect with me are people who've tried most everything, is available. But I always still screen for things like sleep apnea because no matter how much time you have in bed, sleep might be poor if you're not breathing properly at nighttime. So I always screen for things like that. But the folks who I usually see, there's a lot of anxiety and worry around sleep. They may have tried things like supplements. And most of the time, there's maybe other kind of sources of stress in their life. Maybe they're also anxious or have depression, or stress is still kind of a big component. So I just like to spend time with people to get to know what their situation is. But usually they have the hallmark signs, like they're having trouble falling asleep still, despite having opportunity, and there's a lot of fear, in particular about sleep loss, right? I think those folks really benefit from taking a really big step back. Sometimes I will encourage them, if they haven't, to see their doctor first, just to rule out any medical issues that might be contributing to their sleep problem.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Yeah.
On a quick note there on the sleep apnea, there's I'm not sure which psychometric you tend to recommend, but when we have people reach out and they're not sure, it's try the stop bang.
Yes,
free online.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
It's free online. Give it a try. Obviously, go to a medical professional. Go through the steps. But if you're just wanting to get your foot in the door, check out the stop bang, and it gives you at least an idea of where, how hard you should pursue this. Generally, it's worth just go finding out because anyone I know that's gone from not having a CPAP machine when they need one, there's having it, they say it's night and day.
Oh yeah.
Complete switch around.
Well, huge, and I think there's some interesting stats more recently that showed like globally, there's like over 900 million people who go undiagnosed, and they can increase risk of strokes and heart attacks and just like general poor quality of health in life, So absolutely. I always like to screen for that because some people don't know.
Yeah. Your body needs oxygen.
Just not aware. Like, why am I so tired despite having opportunity to sleep? And that can mix in with the insomnia because it's a greater risk. They're going to be awake at night, and then you get anxious, right? And then it just double whammy challenges.
So, what do you see most prominently? Do you find people that are, new parents, notorious struggle with sleep? There's something a little bit out of their control. There's shift work. There's people in very high stress jobs. There's people in, situations where their brain just never stops. Like, what do you tend to see?
Yeah, I'd say the whole range, because it's normal to experience poor sleep or you're at greater risk when you have stress, right? But most of the time, the stress starts to dissipate and then sleep will rebound. Like a lot of the ways that our body works, it always tries to come back to equilibrium, balance, right? But the folks who tip into chronic insomnia, there are a couple of risk factors. One, being a woman puts you at greater risk because changes of hormones, right, in your life.
It's 2 to 1, I think, right?
Yeah, it's almost 2 to 1. But also like societal pressure, right? Caregiving, right, can disrupt that too. So a lot of new parents or second-time parents, right, where sleep got better and then another kid came around and this kid's sleeping better. And I've experienced insomnia myself, and that's the context. Kid was sleeping better, but my mind was just continuing to go, right? I work with a lot of healthcare professionals and people in high stress jobs, lawyers, because these are folks who are determined or problem solvers. And that the most frustrating thing about insomnia is that it's not something you can think yourself out of, or you can't solve it from sheer will, and gritting your teeth. A lot of folks who have slept well for really long period of time, but then something happened stress-wise, and then it's the first time that they've ever experienced not being able to sleep, right? Yeah. And then that snowball. So it's a huge range, right?
Yeah. That's very true. So generally speaking, before they walk in your door, it could be anyone on the street. That comes through. They try everything. They'll first, from what I've experienced on our side as well, they try popping the pill for $10. They try a few other supplements. Maybe they go to the doctor and get medication.
Yes.
Maybe they go try other things.
Yes.
And if it continues and continues, that's when they're like, I need professional help.
Yeah.
It's, maybe you know this, that I can't remember specifically the number of years, but I know it was many years, like minimum 5 years that the average person will suffer from insomnia before they seek professional support.
It's true. And just to clarify, that insomnia, chronic insomnia, is usually folks who've experienced it for 3 months or longer. Yeah. Because it's common to have periods where sleep might be poor.
Yes.
Or for a little while, right? But yeah, like people, I think, one, because I think there needs to be more education around what insomnia is, right? Rather than just an occasional poor night. But also that, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have access to sleep medicine physicians or even know that exists, right? And then, of course, there's barriers to accessing that as well for many different reasons, right? And so I think if your doctor, talking to your doctor and you're not getting anywhere, make sure, ask them, do you know about cognitive behavioral therapy? Is there anyone you recommend? If not, can you refer me to somebody, just to screen a little bit farther if you're continuing to have sleep troubles, right? And medication isn't doing it.
Such as Tony from Quadra Wellness.
Yeah, such as me, or we still have to be kind of advocates for ourselves. It's just know that it's not the end; it's just medication.
Yes,
that can only really address symptoms. It can be very useful short term, but long term, you got to look at is there anything else that's perpetuating this problem for me?
Definitely,
right?
100%. And on that note, so people, they walk through the door, you do a little bit of onboarding, you get to understand them a little bit, and then can you kind of walk through that onboarding phase to when they tend to start to, the training wheels are off and they're going on their own?
Yeah, so we base it on what I love about it. It's a short-term kind of treatment and therapy, but we use a lot of data. So again, we're tracking in our sleep diary, and so we use that as our baseline. So okay, hey, your efficiency is really low, right? And there's a lot of anxiety. So we're gonna figure out some cognitive tools that work for you. Hey, we're gonna write down our worries before bed, right? We're getting the practice of unloading worries before bed and perhaps delaying worries. The next part is we're going to, find a rhythm that works for you. Okay, 7 o'clock works for you for your life. So we're going to actually go to bed around midnight, or that's the earliest time we're going to go to bed. We never talk about a bedtime because sometimes you're not ready.
Yeah.
Right? But we're going to go to bed when we're sleepy. Once we kind of set up those tools, most of the time, 1-2 weeks in, people start to notice some improvement. Hey, you're spending less time awake. You got a 6-hour chunk of sleep, right? And you didn't freak out in the middle of the night. That's success. And that starts to create a bit of momentum. I think gradually we might add a little bit more time until people get to a sweet spot where they feel like they're getting enough sleep, but that sleep is very efficient, right? And in general, they're not feeling as tense or anxious or worried about that. It's like, what I love about it is that you just notice like this weight come off someone's shoulders.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, wow, I was trying way too hard.
Yeah.
And I often get the response like, wow, why didn't I do that before? But just honoring that you care about your sleep and you really, really cared about it. Now you care about it, but you're not worried about it, right? And that's, to me, is just so rewarding.
Definitely. I mean, it's not something you can just directly manipulate and control, right?
No, you can't. Sleep ultimately is a physiological process that we can respect. And I think more people are respecting sleep, but we can't control it. And we're also, we're designed to be quite resilient too.
Yeah.
Right. So we can't forget that we can endure. Right.
Yeah. But one of the other people who spoke to, Pat Byrne, he talked a lot about what he did with athletes on sleep banking and setting yourself up for success. And if you have a bad night's sleep, so what? It's okay. You were prepared for this. It's come, and you just keep on moving forward.
Yeah.
It'll happen now and then.
Exactly. I mean, even like the GOATs of tennis, for example, Serena Williams. I like to always share this example, but she, through the years, tweeted all sorts of things about her sleep, after having kids and having insomnia and being really honest about it. But hey, like she still won and beat her sister in 2017, despite having poor sleep. So it's just remembering that, we can endure, we can still do things that are meaningful, even when sleep isn't its best. Tomorrow's another night to sleep better.
Yeah.
Right? So don't be hard on yourself if you're struggling, right?
Yeah. Amazing. So what generally speaking, it's personalized, which I know I'm going against the grain here of asking, like each person would have a different program.
Yes.
Would be adapting on a relatively frequent basis. Yeah. Would they be seeing you weekly, every day? For how long does it again typically go? We're talking in the bell curve distribution.
Yeah. Yeah, usually I work with people generally between 4 to 6 weeks, and the spacing really depends on the person's schedule. Like depending on where maybe they already have tried some online CBT-I, and now they just want to work together to refine it or make it work better for them. But yeah, generally it's kind of 3 to 4 sessions within that time space. And it is quite structured in the sense that, hey, we're basing it on data. And even though I follow cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, I also, we bend sometimes around the rules, right? Yeah, if lying in bed and getting out of bed isn't accessible to you, what can we do to further reduce the struggle? I mean, you're gonna get up. Yeah. Or actually you like reading in bed, so let's read in bed before. No, that's okay, right? But let's write those down so we can track trends and see what works for you.
Yes.
Right? That's the key thing. And letting go of expectations or worries or fear mongering that you've come across on the internet.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. You're not getting 8 hours, therefore your sleep is terrible. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Quality over quantity is, at least at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
It just to really help take that pressure off people.
Yeah. Right? And reframing what is good sleep, what is sleep is also,
What is good sleep for you?
Exactly.
Right? It could be very different from me. If you're functioning well in 6.5 hours and you feel good, you get through the day, then that's what you need.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to spend 9 hours in bed anymore.
Yes. Yeah. And again, it's something that happens to you. So whatever is best for you on your chronotype, on your cycle, on the time frame.
Yes.
That's what you should shoot for.
Yes.
It's not I think a lot of people compare. I think that's probably my biggest pet peeve with the 8-hour window is, am I getting more or less sleep than this other person? And am I sleeping better than them? Depends how you feel in the morning. Depends what you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And there's one graph I always like to show folks from the National Sleep Foundation that shows what a normal distribution of sleep across the lifespan. And for most adults, between 7 or 9 can be good, but it also indicates 6 can be healthy, and sometimes 10 or 11 might be appropriate, right? And so what that says is that what's normal can be a huge variation, let alone genetic variations too. There are people who are genetically disposed to functioning on less. Very rare, but it's possible, right?
Yeah. It's like less than 1% of people that function on less than 5 hours or something.
Totally.
It's crazy rare.
Exactly. But even, and I like to honor the experience of parents or caregivers.
Yeah.
And shift workers, right? Like, we can deal with occasional permutations in sleep and survive, right? And still show up for things that matter most in our life.
Yeah. And on the shift worker side too, personalization, what is good for you is going to change as you go as well.
Yes.
Shift work changes, or you fall ill and you're sick.
Yes.
The amount of sleep you need just changed.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what why I love chatting with you and tools like the sleep mask where we can even further personalize, especially for shift work around. I'm very curious about the utility of time light exposure.
Yeah.
Right. Or having blackout when we need it to really align with your rhythm, your current rhythm, right? While you're doing shift work. I think there's a lot of utility in there, right?
Definitely. Yeah. It's a huge focus for us as well. So that's generally the journey. So after whatever that 3 to 6 week, generally speaking, window, what does it look like after that? Do you find you just do a touch point every month? Do you never hear from them again, which is sometimes the best thing you can want for.
Yeah, exactly. I often say hey, if I never hear from you, that's great. But I always, because I remind people or try to remind people that, hey, you know what? Insomnia, as we've discovered, is more often a symptom, right? Mm-hmm. It's not that your brain isn't able and capable of sleep. You've proven that, right? And so like anything that happens to you in life that's stressful, there's no delete key, right? Mm. And maybe insomnia can come back, but I spend time with people and what are some warning signs for you? Oh, I'm going to bed too early, or I'm starting to really worry or ruminate on sleep. And so that's personalized too, right? What are you gonna do if you have trouble? Well, you can always reach out to me, right? Yeah. Or you can go back to your list of what helped in the past. You can track your sleep again, right? And I'm going to bed way too early, but my hope is that someone becomes their own sleep therapist and recognize that they're the expert in their body, and to feel confident that they have tools they can always come back to.
Yeah, I love that idea of warning signs too. Like just having these mental associations and triggers of this, we're talked a lot about mental associations, and in this case, it's, that warning, that red light starting to go of, wait, I shouldn't be doing this. I learned this last time, and going back to those techniques that
And I think this is why cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is considered the best treatment, because those side effects are also enduring, right? People aren't going to forget what has helped in the past. Like, I think I'm spending way too much time in bed. So you know what? I'm going to get out and read a book, right? And something I still occaionally do too, right? I have this little nest on the couch. There's always a book there. I always have an out, right? So I don't make sleep a struggle again.
Yeah, starting this business, there's been a few times 3 a.m. and my mind's just going.
Yeah.
And at first I resisted it and I try and fight it and then try and stay in bed. And what I actually found helped was going and just doing a quick bit of work and scheduling it. Of, okay, I'm just gonna, it's 3 a.m. I'm not gonna do my best work right now, but you know what? I have time tomorrow at this slot. I'm gonna put it in, just try and get it out of my head and onto the sheet. So and going back to everyone has sleep problems. The experts are often also the patients and the clients themselves.
We're human, you know, and I love that example because sometimes we have not even stress, but inspiration or ideas, you know, but just accepting and reducing the resistance around having thoughts, because that's being human. Another model of therapy I draw a lot on, it's kind of a more emerging evidence that shows it can be helpful too, because CBTI isn't for everybody, right? It's called acceptance and commitment therapy for insomnia. And the heart of that philosophy is that we can build flexibility around how we think. Just as you said, you try not to resist the thought, you acknowledge the thought, and you gave that thought somewhere to go. And because you did that, you didn't struggle with having that thought or try to push it away, right? And then you were able to relax because of that.
And you said it was ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy?
Yeah, for insomnia. And there's a great book out there called The Sleep Book by Dr. Guy Meadows. I often recommend that one. But I usually kind of mesh both strategies together, but just that idea of building flexibility, self-compassion, making choices that don't further add to the suffering is the philosophy behind it.
Yes. So something else, while we're kind of a bit on this journey, we talked about falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up. What's your thought around napping? And another person we spoke to, named Chandani, went through concussion. So napping was part of the challenge and experience of that. Is napping something you suggest? Is there a good nap? Is there a bad nap?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. Some people you say, have a nap, and they're like, I've never napped in my life, you know? And I find folks who are already kind of on the threshold of high anxiety, you know, and that's the hallmark of insomnia is they're not falling asleep during the day, they're not sleeping well at night, but they're wired throughout the day, right? The way I like to frame naps is that if you do nap, how do you think about it as a way not to make up for lost sleep, but will it help you feel better in the afternoon, right? And to give yourself a bit of a lift, right? And you know, the general recommendations are, you know, under an hour, somewhere before 4 p.m. But to play with that. But even more than that, I ask, do you have an opportunity for rest during the day, right?
True.
Even thinking about it as a mental break of closing your eyes, putting on a mask, you know, do whatever you do that helps you feel relaxed, and reducing stimulation that's, you know, that either self-imposed or from work. If you can do that, see how you feel.
Yeah.
You know, and if it's disrupting your sleep at night, you're having trouble, then either you need to move it earlier or reduce it. But it's amazing what giving yourself permission to rest can do.
And it sounds like mentally you're treating napping not as a supplement to sleep, but as its own category of function.
Yeah. And for some people it can be. As we get older and sleep becomes a bit more disrupted, that nap may become more of a way to get a little bit of extra sleep. But I can just reminding people it's about you, right? And I think giving people permission to experiment in a kind of being a bit of your own kind of sleep sleuth investigator, you know? If that doesn't work, well, what else can you change, right? Can you change the timing or the length, right? Until you find a sweet spot for you.
Yeah. I love the concept of treating it as a rest period as well.
Yes.
Is there, you know, if you've never napped before, you're probably going to be frustrated if you don't fall asleep during your nap. If it's just there to rest, whether you become unconscious or not throughout that process, stage 1 sleep is arguably, you know, we won't get into those nuances, but yeah, treating it as I'm just intentionally resting is a very different mindset.
Yes, and I think on the idea of rest is that rest is not necessarily sleep either, right? And How many of us, when we have a break in our day, go from looking at the screen to looking at our phone, and then filling any possible gap of quiet with some kind of stimulation, right? And so what would it feel like to just close your eyes and lie down for just a few minutes, right? Or to sit in this chair and just to notice whether you're breathing, and often people notice, wow, I'm actually really tense, or that felt good just to close my eyes, for a few minutes.
Definitely. There's that period of just instant reaction of pull out the phone, click back. And getting past that threshold is so important.
Yes.
And there's this rise again, which I'm a huge fan of finding boredom again. And boredom is like this dying, what was byproduct before is now becoming an art of like finding boredom is so important. I can't remember who said it, that I'm terrible with names if you haven't caught on to that. But there's the 3 B's of innovation: the bed, the bath, and the bus. And the whole concept is that during those 3 time periods, you're just alone in your own mental space and you're not engaging. And now some of that has changed. That in the bus, now might be on your phone and you're not allowing that creativity to hit and that boredom to hit of just keep it in your pocket.
And just being able to rest our mind and not have stimulation allows our brain to actually get some physical rest too, right? You're absolutely right.
It's an organ, right? Like just like anything else, you need to give it some time off.
And I think even more, it's like the idea of being okay in our own mind and not always having a distraction, I think can be a benefit in so many different ways, because when we start to notice our thoughts and we cultivate ways of just allowing thoughts to be, they become less scary, right? And often people, when getting ready for bed, they notice all these thoughts, but they don't have any tools on what to do, right? Or they don't know what allowing those thoughts to be even means anymore, right? Yeah,
100%. Okay, so one thing I just want to make sure we fully capture you. So there was social work, you notice sleep being this consistent issue across the whole breadth of challenges out there that we're working with. Before getting into social work, like what led you down that path in the first place?
For me, I've always kind of worked in community and mental health, but I think it's just noticing that sleep has always been a component when someone's having a hard time. And I think just recognizing that sometimes people can't sleep because they're homeless, right? But I think it's just an opportunity to draw on more compassion, because we all can relate to the idea that when we don't sleep well, life is hard, right? And there are a lot of circumstances that make it difficult for me to get that sleep. So how can we even use that as a way to offer compassion to others, and even more so, and for ourselves as well when we're having our time, right? So I'm not going to be hard on myself because I can't sleep right now. I'm going to be compassionate because I'm going through things right now. My life stress is high, right? What's within my control right now? What would it be like? What would I say to a good friend who's having a hard time, right? And so I think, for me, the heart of it is about, it's about cultivating compassion.
I mean, I couldn't help but notice the arm there. Do you want to speak a little bit to how you use wearables in your practice?
I mean, I love experimenting and learning about new technologies. It's really exciting for me. But ironically, I do not track my sleep. I don't pay attention to the stats or trends, because I already have a good sense of my sleep rhythm per se. In general, and I get that question all the time, should I wear this? Should be tracking? I say no, because one, even the best wearables on the market don't compare to a lab study. But it also doesn't really matter per se.
Exactly.
Right? It's help you track trends. But you don't have direct control of how much REM sleep or deep sleep you get, let alone that it's not that accurate for people with sleep disorders.
100%.
Right? I am excited about Apple now being able to give people heads up if they're going to experience sleep apnea.
Yes, that's great to see.
And everyone's different. Some people go like, hey, actually it is reassuring for me because, hey, it tells me I slept more than I think I did. But more often than not, it's the opposite, right? And there's a term maybe you come across called orthosomnia, right? Where that pressure to perfect and control sleep actually becomes quite problematic and makes it difficult to rest and relax. Right?
It's obsessing over that data. And I think it's a topic that some people feel they need to tread lightly when they're speaking to us about it. But we intentionally designed our sleep tracking around the concept of what is a good sleep, and that is personalized. And then, you can't do much about the data. So what can we use that data for? So it's actually valuable to you. Like, what are the insights we can provide that has led to what you qualified as a good night's sleep and sleep data that match that. So you get to learn throughout the process rather than it being like, well, my tracker said I didn't get enough REM sleep last night, so I guess I'll feel terrible today. Like, it's not really how that works. It's you tell it the other way around, and from there we try and find correlations that could be helpful.
And I think that's where technology can be amazing tool, right? To further personalize that journey rather than scaring people. Like often if it rates your sleep, well, how do we know? Algorithms are also different, right? And so, it can be a useful tool to recognize, hey, I have been going to bed a little bit too late. Or maybe I'm spending too much time awake and tossing and turning, like that feedback. But then adding on, well, what do I do about that? It's really important.
Exactly. And there's only so much you can do. Like at the end of the day, we've got an app that, one of our scores we call Sleep Mastery, where there's things that you can consciously choose and do to help support your journey, but it's still an app. It's not a human being that you're speaking to. So that is something we're very consciously aware of as well as that.
That's awesome. And I would love to see technology. I mean, we need to leverage technology in this and for people to be able to be connected to put some more support, right? To just make that more seamless or just point people into like the right direction. Right.
Oh, and understanding the journey as well, right? Like we want to be able to say, like, for something like chronic insomnia, we're not a medical device. We're not going to fix that for you. But we might be able to help get your foot in the door started. And then once you start seeing your plateau, let's connect you to someone like Tony from Quadra Wellness to take you to that next level. The sleep, it's an ongoing journey.
Totally. Or like, hey, like for example, the Apple devices, you may have some risk factors for sleep apnea. Like that could cut out years of someone's suffering, right? Just by getting the right information at the right time.
100%. People joke about snoring without understanding that sometimes you snore a little, sometimes it's a problem that you should be addressing.
Totally. And because so many people go into the rabbit hole of trying different solutions like mouth taping, and maybe some people find it helpful, but generally you should go get screened first. And so I'm a big advocate of just talking to the right person and advocating for yourself to talk to the right person, right? Get to the right person.
So we're gonna move on to a rapid fire section here. Going through a few more quick questions. So what would you say the craziest story or experience you had in CBTI, and what that experience was like?
The most wild experience. Well, I worked with one person who was so anxious around reducing their melatonin because it became to a point where it was kind of like a placebo effect. But it took about 6-7 months for them to like break it down to very small amounts, and they gradually weaned themselves off. But it was just a reminder of again, compassion for ourselves and how anxiety can play a really big part in sustaining insomnia, right? And so that one I always come to.
And in terms of pop culture understanding of sleep, what would you say is the one popular thing out there around sleep that you would refute and say that's wrong?
That you have to have X amount of sleep. And I think and if you're going to read a book like Why We Sleep by Dr. Matt Walker, is to take it with a grain of salt.
It's information. It's not necessarily your reality.
Yes, not doctrine or that you're doomed, right?
We talked a bit about chronotypes. So I'm going to do a quick definition, but essentially people have varying temperatures and hormone cycles that have them fall asleep and wake up at different times than others. So do you know what your chronotype is, and anything on it?
I would be what's called like a third bird. I'm not super night out, super early bird or night owl. I'm like 11-ish, but kind of similar to you. Like sometimes I have ideas or get excited about something, so I'm up a little bit later, and then I struggle a little bit the next day, but I honor that as best as I can.
Your own experience, how has your sleep changed across time?
I think now being a parent, I've been through periods where sleep was out of my control, but I just try to keep the pressure off. I have a little corner. If sleep for whatever reason is challenging, I really try and just reduce the struggle, right? I can get on the couch, I can read, and more often than not, I can get back to sleep.
If you were to finish a sentence, sleep is
essential.
And just wanted to open the floor. Any final thoughts or ideas that you wanted to share?
I'm just excited where you guys go next on this journey. And I think I appreciate the perspective around personalizing sleep. And to anyone that's out there listening, it's just yeah, take the pressure off on yourself. Takes pressure off yourself around sleep, and yeah, just know that you're not alone, right?
Yeah.
That there's help out there, support out there for you.
And if anyone here wants to find you, is there a website or anything that you would suggest?
Yeah, they can go to quadrawellness.com, or you can find me on social media under Quadra Wellness on TikTok or kind of other platforms. But yeah, reach out if you have any questions.
This has been Quadra, Quadra
Yep,
Wellness.
that's great. Yeah.
.com or on social media.
Yeah, or you can just Google Tony Ho. You'll find me on the internet somewhere.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
It was awesome. Cheers.